You're all under arrest. 6 words, 1 microphone, and 100 of America's most wanted criminals realizing, in the same horrifying second, that they've walked straight into their own trap. December 15th, 1985, Washington, D.C. Right now, in this exact moment, wanted criminals are clinking champagne glasses with drug lords. Armed robbers are laughing at a dancing chicken mascot. A man wanted for killing 3 people is casually eating a Danish at the buffet. They all think they're VIP guests at the party of the year. Free tickets to the most sold-out game in football history. But every waiter smiling at them is carrying a concealed gun. Every cheerleader who hugged them at the door just frisked them for weapons. And that man in the top hat walking toward the microphone, he's about to destroy their lives. Here's the insane part. These fugitives, men who've spent years hiding from the law, sleeping with guns under their pillows, never trusting anyone. They didn't get tricked into coming here. They invited themselves. They RSVP'd. They called to confirm. They asked what to wear. One guy brought his girlfriend. How do you exploit the human mind so perfectly that criminals arrest themselves? And when these 100 armed men realize they've been played, what stops this room from becoming a massacre? This is Operation Flagship, the most brilliant psychological trap ever set. And you're about to witness how the darkest secrets of human psychology became the deadliest weapon in American law enforcement history. United States, 1985. The US Marshal Service was drowning in failure. Not because they lacked skill, not because they lacked courage, but because they were fighting a war they couldn't win. 250,000 fugitives, nationwide, hundreds in Washington, D.C. alone, murderers, armed robbers, escaped convicts, men who'd vanished into neighborhoods where police cars didn't dare slow down. They lived openly, boldly, with loaded guns within arm's reach. And the marshals? Their job was to drag these men back to prison. Every warrant meant kicking down a door. Every door could have a shotgun behind it. Every arrest could end in a spray of bullets. Deputies came back with holes in their vests, or they didn't come back at all. District Marshal Herbert Rutherford stood over too many flag-draped coffins. He watched experienced deputies burn out, quit, or worse. The math was brutal. For every fugitive captured, 3 more warrants landed on the pile. This wasn't law enforcement. This was attrition. Inside headquarters, morale collapsed. Veterans traded horror stories over coffee. Partners shot through doorways. Suspects vanishing through back windows. Innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. Rutherford stared at the mountain of warrants and felt the weight of impossibility. He needed to arrest dozens of armed criminals simultaneously, without a single shot fired, without giving any of them time to reach for a weapon. But what could possibly make a paranoid fugitive, a man who flinches at every siren, who sleeps with a gun under his pillow, walk peacefully into handcuffs? The answer would come from an unlikely place, and it would reveal a psychological truth so powerful, so deeply wired into human nature, that even the smartest criminals couldn't resist it. October 1985, late night, a diner in Washington, D.C. Chief Deputy Louis McKinney sat across from Rutherford, both men exhausted, watching a muted TV above the counter. On screen, the Washington Redskins, crushing their opponents, 7-1 record, playoff bound. Every game sold out. Scalpers were getting $300 per seat. In a city tearing itself apart with crack cocaine and murder, the Redskins were the one thing that united. McKinney stared at the screen. Then something clicked in his brain, a connection so strange, so audacious, that he almost dismissed it, but he didn't. He turned to Rutherford. What if we stop chasing them? What if we make them come to us? Rutherford's eyebrows shot up. McKinney grabbed a napkin and started sketching. Free Redskins tickets, hottest item in the city. We throw a VIP party. Get them relaxed, happy, surrounded. Then lock the doors and arrest everyone at once. It violated every principle of law enforcement. It sounded absurd. It relied on criminals being stupid enough to walk into an obvious trap. But McKinney had a theory, and this theory was about to become a weapon. Fugitives aren't stupid, he said, tapping the napkin. They're greedy. And greed makes smart people do profoundly dumb things. Here's the psychological truth they were exploiting. Life on the run is hell. Constant paranoia. No friends you can trust. You watch football alone in a cramped apartment, flinching at every knock on the door. You can't go to bars. Can't celebrate with crowds. Can't feel normal. Then a letter arrives, official looking, professional, telling you that you've won something, that you're special, that you're invited to a VIP event, free food, champagne, and tickets to the biggest game of the year.
The Marshals weren't just offering football tickets.
They were offering something far more intoxicating, the feeling of being a winner instead of a hunted animal, and that craving, that deep psychological need to feel special overrides almost every survival instinct. Rutherford stared at the napkin for a long moment. Then he nodded. Let's pitch it. Two exhausted men in a diner had just designed the most brilliant psychological trap in law enforcement history. But an idea on a napkin doesn't catch criminals. They needed approval. They needed a fake company with real-looking credentials. They needed 3,000 perfectly crafted invitations. They needed officers willing to dress as waiters and cheerleaders, and they needed fugitives to actually show up. Because if this didn't work, if the criminals smelled the trap, the party would turn into a massacre. McKinney pitched the plan to the team. A few deputies laughed. Invite murderers to brunch? Are you serious? But McKinney kept talking, and the laughter stopped. Here was the plan. Create a fake company called Flagship International Sports Television. The acronym? FIST, matching the Marshals' own fugitive investigative strike team. Print 3,000 letters on professional letterhead. Announce free tickets to the December 15th Redskins-Bengals game. Include a raffle for season tickets and a Super Bowl trip. Mail them to every fugitive with a known address. Invite them to a VIP brunch at the convention center to collect their prizes. And arrest everyone who walks through the door. The details were darkly comedic. The fictional executive who signed the letters? His name was I Am Wanted. The phone lines hold music. I fought the law. Every element was a private joke, but the psychology behind it was deadly serious. By late November, 3,000 letters dropped across D.C. Then, silence. 1 week, 2 weeks. Had they seen through it? Were the criminals smarter than expected? Then the phone rang. A man wanted for armed robbery confirmed his attendance. He asked if he could bring his girlfriend. Of course, sir, the deputy replied, voice steady. The more the merrier. One fish hooked, but they needed dozens. Then the calls started flooding in. Day after day, fugitives dialed the flagship hotline to RSVP for a party that would end with them in prison. Career criminals thanked the receptionists. One man wanted for assault asked what to wear. Another wanted details about the buffet. A third asked about the open bar. The deputies bit their lips bloody, fighting to stay in character while wanted felons scheduled their own arrests. Within 10 days, 160 fugitives had confirmed. Dozens more planned to just show up. Word filtered back that some fugitives were bragging to neighbors about their free tickets. One reportedly flashed the invitation to his parole officer. The boldest, most reckless criminals, exactly the men the Marshals wanted, were volunteering for the guest list. But here's what kept the task force awake at night. Every fugitive attending was potentially armed, desperate, willing to kill to avoid going back to prison. If even one guest sensed the trap before the takedown, one paranoid criminal noticing the waiters watching too closely, the cheerleaders acting too friendly, the exits too well guarded, he could pull a weapon. And one gun drawn would trigger a dozen more. The ballroom would become a killing floor. They had one advantage: surprise. One shot to get it right. But how do you train a SWAT officer to smile and pour coffee for a murderer? How do you stay in character when you're standing 3 feet away from a man who's killed before and will kill again? And when Charles Watkins, one of DC's 10 most wanted, walked through that door, would anyone be able to keep their composure? To survive this operation, the Marshals had to become actors, and the performance had to be flawless. In a warehouse across town, SWAT officers practiced carrying trays without instinctively reaching for sidearms. Tactical specialists who'd spent years breaching doors rehearsed pouring champagne with warm, genuine smiles. Gruff deputies memorized cheerful lines. "Right this way, sir. More champagne? Congratulations on being a winner." Female deputies would dress in bright Redskins cheerleader outfits and station themselves at the entrance. Their mission? Intercept every arriving fugitive with an enthusiastic hug. Sounds ridiculous, but it was genius. That hug was a weapons pat-down. In 3 seconds, maybe 4, the cheerleader would feel for a pistol at the waist, a knife in a coat pocket, anything metal pressed against the body. If she found a weapon, a subtle hand signal would alert the backup team to intervene before the guest reached the ballroom. If he was clean, he got waved through with a dazzling smile. 2 of the largest marshals drew the most absurd assignments in law enforcement history. One would spend the morning in a full-body chicken mascot costume. The other would wear a Native American headdress and Redskins jersey, impersonating an unofficial team mascot. These weren't jokes. They were tactical camouflage. The organizers wanted controlled chaos, loud music, dancing mascots, constant visual distractions. If the fugitives were laughing at a chicken doing a goofy dance, they wouldn't notice the waiters watching them too closely. They wouldn't wonder why the ushers kept positioning themselves near exits. The team ran full dress rehearsals, taping out the ballroom layout on warehouse concrete. Every undercover officer would carry a concealed pistol, but the goal was to never draw it. Because if this went sideways, if one fugitive grew suspicious and reached for a weapon, there would only be chaos, screaming, bodies. The marshals reminded each other constantly, stay in character, keep your hands visible, trust the plan, and pray nobody notices. But they couldn't rehearse for everything. What would happen when the first fugitive arrived an hour early, and when 100 armed men finally heard the words, "You're all under arrest"? Would any of them try to fight their way out? December 15th, 1985. The temperature hovered near freezing in the pre-dawn darkness. By 5:30 a.m., unmarked trucks had finished unloading through the convention center's service entrance. Banners, buffet supplies, sound equipment, the chicken costume, cases of champagne. By sunrise, the grand ballroom was transformed into the most elaborate trap in law enforcement history. Buffet tables overflowed, scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, fresh pastries, fruit platters. Redskins banners hung from every wall. Red and gold balloons clustered in corners. Television sets played highlight reels on loop. The sound system pumped fight songs. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a VIP celebration for lucky winners, not a cage for 100 wanted men. The deputies took their positions, waiters behind buffet tables, cheerleaders by the entrance, ushers near registration. The chicken mascot practiced his waddle one last time. The tactical team waited in the corridors, invisible but ready. At 9 a.m., the doors would open. Every undercover officer checked their concealed weapon one final time. 8 a.m. The first fugitive arrived a full hour early, too excited to wait. The team scrambled into character. A cheerleader intercepted him at the entrance with a dazzling smile. She wrapped him in a long, warm hug, confirmed in those 3 seconds, no weapon. A tuxedoed usher guided him to registration, where a hostess checked his name and pinned a bright name tag to his chest. The tag's color secretly coded his threat level: blue, low risk; red, dangerous, for the most violent offenders. Those flagged for assault, armed robbery, homicide. The staff would announce them as double winners, a code phrase alerting other marshals to watch them closely during the takedown. The fugitive noticed nothing. He was too busy grinning at the free donuts and hot coffee. More guests trickled in, then flooded. By mid-morning, the ballroom held over 100 wanted felons, and not a single one knew they were surrounded. They loaded plates at the buffet, clinked champagne glasses with strangers, laughed at the chicken mascot's absurd dance moves. Some recognized each other from past crimes or old prison stints. They shrugged and joked like friends at a tailgate. Charles Watkins, one of DC's 10 most wanted for homicide, stood near the buffet, calmly eating a Danish and debating playoff chances with another guest. Accused murderers chatted with drug kingpins about the weather. Armed robbers posed for photos with the mascot. Every criminal in that room had spent months, years, looking over their shoulder, flinching at sirens, sleeping with one eye open. And now, for one glorious morning, they'd let their guard down completely. The marshals exchanged imperceptible nods across the room. The trap was full. The doors were about to lock. Now came the most dangerous 30 seconds any of them would ever experience. On stage, Deputy Marshal Louis McKinney, the MC in his ridiculous top hat and tails, stepped to the microphone and tapped it twice. The music lowered. The room gradually quieted. 100 faces turned toward the stage. Undercover marshals drifted toward the exits, locked them one by one. Movement so casual, nobody noticed. Behind the walls, the tactical team, in full combat gear, moved silently into breach positions. McKinney beamed at the crowd like a game show host about to announce the grand prize. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. The fugitives cheered, raised their glasses. Now, before we head to the game, McKinney continued, raising one hand dramatically, we have one big surprise for all of you. His voice hung in the air. Every marshal in the room stopped breathing. 100 armed fugitives stood between them and the exits. The tactical team had their hands on door handles. The cheerleaders had vanished. The waiters' hands were drifting toward hidden holsters. If even one person in that crowd sensed what was about to happen, if one paranoid criminal made a move before the signal, the next 3 seconds would determine who walked out alive. McKinney's smile vanished. His voice dropped to something cold, hard. You're all under arrest. One heartbeat of absolute silence. The words didn't register. Then, the side doors exploded open. 25 tactical officers flooded into the ballroom in full combat gear, weapons raised, fanning across the room in a practice formation they drilled 100 times. Put your hands on top of your heads, McKinney roared from the stage, his game show charm replaced by the bark of a federal officer. The cheerleaders had disappeared. The waiters had drawn concealed pistols, and 100 fugitives stared down the barrels of guns held by men who'd been refilling their champagne 5 minutes earlier. A few fugitives let out stunned, nervous laughs. Surely this was part of the entertainment. Then they saw the tactical gear, the real badges, the absolute stillness of fingers on triggers. The laughs curdled into curses. One man, wanted for assault, bolted toward an exit. It was locked. Marshals tackled him before he made it 3 steps, driving him face first into the carpet. Around the room, hands rose slowly into the air. No one reached for a weapon. Whatever fight these men carried on the streets, whatever bravado they'd built over years of evading the law, evaporated instantly against the wall of overwhelming force and total surprise. They'd been outmaneuvered by people they'd trusted. Ambushed by their own greed, marshals moved through the crowd, barking commands, snapping handcuffs onto wrists. The compliance was almost eerie. 100 dangerous men dropping to the floor without a fight. A few stammered protests, but most couldn't form words. 5 minutes ago, they'd been VIPs at the party of their lives, toasting their good fortune, dreaming about Super Bowl trips. Now they lay face down on carpet next to overturned champagne glasses and half-eaten plates of eggs. From McKinney's announcement to the last pair of handcuffs clicking shut, lasted under 4 minutes. When the room finally fell silent, the marshals counted heads. 101 fugitives arrested. Not a single shot fired, not a single injury on either side. The most dangerous mass arrest in American history had gone off without a scratch. Outside, yellow school buses idled in a row, waiting to transport prisoners to processing. Marshals led out handcuffed men in groups. Past the entrance, under the banner still reading, "Congratulations." Inside the wrecked ballroom, surrounded by deflating balloons, abandoned buffet trays, and the crumpled chicken costume, the undercover team finally exhaled. Grins broke out. A few whoops of disbelief. They'd pulled off one of the largest mass arrests in American law enforcement history using nothing but fake letterhead, rented costumes, a knockoff mascot, and one brutal psychological truth. Even a man who spent years running from the law can't resist the feeling of being a winner for a day. As one cuffed fugitive shuffled past a group of exhausted marshals, he paused and managed a crooked, rueful grin. A deputy, still wearing his sweat-soaked tuxedo, clapped him on the shoulder and laughed. But the truth was simpler than that. The criminals got themselves. They'd walked into their own prison, shaken hands with the people building their cage, posed for photos with undercover agents, thanked them for the hospitality, and all of it, every handshake, every smile, every moment of feeling special, happened because they couldn't say no to free football tickets that never existed. Operation Flagship became the template for sting operations across the country. Proof that the smartest weapon in law enforcement isn't a battering ram or a tactical team. It's a lie so generous, so perfectly designed to exploit human weakness that nobody can believe it's a trap. Because in the end, the most powerful weapon isn't violence, it's psychology. And the US Marshals had just proven it could catch 101 criminals without firing a single shot. This operation exposed a dark truth about human nature. Our deepest psychological needs, to feel special, to feel like winners, can override even the sharpest survival instincts. The fugitives weren't stupid, they were human, and the Marshals weaponized that humanity against them.